Communist North Korea on June 30th, 1950, invades the South.
America musters her forces as the Korean crisis daily becomes more grave. Enlistment machinery begins to click as the United States is made the spearhead of the United Nations police force against Northern Korean invaders. Particular emphasis is placed on the Marine Corps, long the troubleshooting outfit on foreign soil. While badly outnumbered, Americans and their allies fight a desperate rearguard action on the Asiatic continent. Marine reinforcements are rushed to the scene from West Coast ports of embarkation. The Leathernecks typify the nation's mood of mobilization since the Red sneak attack on southern Korea. They leave to join the first officially approved United Nations police force to stem the Korean communists who are driving Americans and southern Koreans into retreat along a wide front. Facing overwhelming numerical and armored strength of a red-trained army, the Allies retreat southward to regroup and set up a new defense line. GIs dig in along the Kum River in a desperate rearguard action. Artillery rushed in by air goes into action. Against heavily armored columns, the Allies fight desperately to maintain the ever-increasing supply lines coming to the front. But the battle is not always successful. One ammunition train is bombed and completely demolished, a grievous blow to the cause of invaded and ravished southern Korea. But the United Nations forces begin to tighten their defense, and American tanks begin to make their appearance. Although outgunned and outnumbered, they play a large part in slowing the Red advance. The tragic cost of maintaining the peace. Here are the first Americans who paid with their lives, and some of these were taken prisoner, bound, and shot to death by their captors. Already America has suffered 500 casualties, and 40 have paid with their lives. 5 short years after a global war, Americans again pay in blood the price of peace. Leader among the free nations of the earth, her sons once more make the supreme sacrifice. Under the banner of the United Nations, Americans lead the way in the fight against tyranny and slavery throughout the world.
The UN forces on September 14th, 1950, take a risky gamble that pays off.
United Nations forces make a lightning thrust on the west coast port of Incheon. As the invasion fleet nears land, there is feverish activity in the amphibious force. For them, it is D-Day, -1, and landing operations will soon begin. In one of the most brilliant strategic moves of the Korean conflict, elements of the 77th Task Force set the stage for invasion. An end run behind the North Korean lines. Destroyers open up. Rockets take it from there. With Walmy Island guarding the harbor softened up, Marines swarm into landing craft for the attack. Under cover of a continuous barrage of rocket fire, the whole harbor of Incheon is brought under control. But the real test lies ahead. As the landing craft head for the beach, they face an unknown strength in the Incheon garrison. Once again, the Marines are sticking their leathernecks out. With the 7th Infantry Division and South Korean allies, 40,000 men are involved in the operation. The largest single United Nations undertaking since the outbreak of hostilities. Weeks of preparation and practice have gone into the thrust that catches Red Koreans completely by surprise. Incheon is softened up as the Marines hit the beach, and they land almost at will on the island of Walmy. From here, they must cross the causeway leading into the city of Incheon itself. With the landing successfully accomplished and with the Navy in command of the coast, the next stop is Seoul, Korea's ancient capital. General MacArthur pays a surprise visit to the Incheon front to observe personally the brilliant achievement.
But the Korean War will not provide many other brilliant achievements. In time, General MacArthur will be dismissed by President Truman for insubordination, and America will tire of the seesaw war. Eventually, Americans will turn to General Eisenhower as president to help get us out of the Korean mess.
For GI and cameraman.
The Inchon invasion will only lead to eventual stalemate in spite of the rosy optimism of the newsreels.
This is the road to Seoul and the beginning of victory.
America changes again on the first Tuesday in November 1952.
America speaks at the polling booths from coast to coast as 55 million from all walks of life cast their votes for the 33rd man to become President of the United States. From the farms and urban centers, they pile up the biggest vote in the nation's history. And Aroused America cuts across all party and factional lines to record its verdict. Here is the freest democracy in action. The aged and young bring the cross-section of the people to the expression of their will in an atmosphere of calm domestic purpose. Among the prominent voters is elder statesman Herbert Hoover, last Republican president who cast his ballot in New York. President and Mrs. Truman returned to their home in Independence, Missouri, to vote after a whirlwind campaign on behalf of Democratic candidate Adlai Stevenson. In the village of Half Day, Illinois, near his hometown of Bloomington, Governor Stevenson records his vote after one of the most strenuous campaigns in history. Starting as a political unknown, he became a nationally known figure. In New York, General Eisenhower signs the register early on the morning of Election Day. After an illustrious military career and a fighting political campaign, he stands before the American electorate awaiting their answer. While on the opposite side of the country, his running mate, Richard Nixon, and his wife take their turn at the polls in California. Democratic headquarters in Washington, scene of gloom and defeat, as the sweep to Ike becomes more and more apparent. Men who had worked hard for Governor Stevenson now wait, their spirits numbed, for the soon-expected concession of defeat from Springfield, Illinois. It comes soon. Illinois falls to Ike, a sign of the end. It's Eisenhower by a landslide, the greatest plurality of any Republican standard-bearer, with 30 million votes, well over 400 electoral votes. At Republican headquarters, a tremendous ovation greets the president-elect and the next First Lady. A beaming Ike and a radiant Mamie. The long campaign is over. The American people have spoken with a resounding voice at the polls. Victory is here. After 20 years, the Republican Party is back in power. General Dwight D. Eisenhower is elected. His party has won control of Congress, with the Senate pretty evenly divided.
America enters the space age, January 31st, 1958.
At Cape Canaveral, Florida, the Army's Jupiter-C rocket is ready for America's second attempt to launch a space satellite. No relation to the IRBM Jupiter, this is a rebuilt Redstone, a 200-mile missile carrying, instead of a warhead, 3 stages of solid fuel booster rockets and the Explorer, a 6-foot bullet only inches across, crammed with electronic gear. 30 pounds of payload. This close-up of the United States edition of Sputnik was made at a press conference with leaders of the scientific teams, Dr. Werner von Braun, Dr. James Van Allen, and Dr. William Pickering, a 3-way collaboration between private industry, academic science, and the military. Jupiter-C stands poised on its launching pad. The hours-long countdown approaches 0, a moment of enormous tension, for every missile launching is still an experiment. Any one of tens of thousands of things can go wrong, with catastrophic results. But all that can be done to assure perfection has been done. The moment is at hand. The countdown reaches 0.
But it will take the administration of the next president, the firstborn in the 20th century, to get us to the moon. Meanwhile, America is content with its first successful satellite launching.
Some 3 minutes later, Explorer is in orbit, broadcasting to the world its coded scientific data. Cosmic ray intensity, meteor impact, solar radiation. These are the dry facts that will help carry man ever farther into the age of space.
The presidential election of November 3rd, 1960 removes from American politics the myth that a Catholic cannot be elected president. It is a day that changed the course of American political history.
Citizens from Maine to Hawaii record their choices as the attention of the entire globe focuses on the contest for the leadership of the most powerful nation of the free world. The Democratic nominee is an early favorite, and first returns bear out predictions in Mr. Kennedy's favor. But GOP standard-bearer Richard Nixon is staunchly supported. not least by President Eisenhower, who was up early, arriving at 6:18 a.m. at Cumberland Township, Pennsylvania, near his Gettysburg farm to cast his ballot. Eager crowds gathered outside the West End branch of the Boston Public Library as Senator Kennedy and his pretty wife arrived at the polling place early on Election Day before flying on to Cape Cod to await the outcome. Vice President Nixon and his wife, Pat, vote in the playroom of a private home in Whittier, California, the Los Angeles suburb where Mr. Nixon grew up. Mr. Nixon's running mate on the GOP ticket, Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge, was almost totally overshadowed on Election Day by the popular concentration on the principles in one of the most strenuously contested election battles in the nation's history. Senator Lyndon Johnson, Mr. Kennedy's running mate, shared his counterpart's plight this Election Day, as the vagaries of the popular ballot resulted in one of the closest national elections since 1916. Through the long hours of the night, as local districts tallied their results, the Kennedy column recorded an electoral vote frustratingly short of the 269 necessary to win. At his Hyannisport, Massachusetts residence, the Democratic candidate and his wife stoically waited out the returns, as did Vice President Nixon on the other side of the country, who even made a quick trip across the border for an Election Day lunch. That night, Mr. Nixon appeared at local GOP headquarters with his wife to the cheers of campaign workers. At almost 4 a.m., he virtually acknowledged defeat.
As I look at the board here, while there are still some results still to come in, if the present trend continues, if Mr. Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, will be the next president of the United States.
The hours that followed were frustrating and baffling as the key returns hung in the balance. Not till the middle of the next day was the victory reclinched by one of the closest margins recorded, a plurality of barely over 300,000. The unexpectedly delayed climax saw Senator Kennedy the victor with a clear margin of electoral votes. At 43 years of age, he is the youngest man ever voted into the White House and the first Catholic chief executive in the history of the nation, with victories in the Southern Bible Belt, as well as the industrial centers of the North, to attest the shattering of a long-standing political taboo. In Mr. Kennedy's first public appearance after his election, accompanied by his wife Jacqueline, his father, Financier Joseph Kennedy, makes his first appearance since the campaign began, and the weary president-elect makes his first address in his new capacity.
To all Americans, I say that the next 4 years are going to be difficult and challenging years for us all. The election may have been a close one, but I think that there is general agreement by all of our citizens that a supreme national effort will be needed in the years ahead to move this country safely through the 1960s. I ask your help in this effort, and I can assure you that every degree of mind and spirit that I possess will be devoted to the long-range interests of the United States and to the cause of freedom around the world. So now my wife and I prepare for a new administration and for a new baby. Thank you.
The day, February 7th, 1962, an American orbits the Earth.
5 hours before he is destined to take a giant stride into history, Colonel John H. Glenn, Jr. squeezes into his spacesuit. His smiling face belies the 10 postponements of his flight that have kept him grounded. This morning, the weather over Cape Canaveral and in the pickup areas is better, and there's an air of optimism as the colonel walks to the gantry elevator. Carrying his now familiar portable air conditioner, Glenn prepares to go to the 11th deck as clocks point to 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The skies are beginning to lighten, and a cool north wind rustles across the Cape. The colonel's date with destiny comes 10 months after the Russians claimed an orbital flight by Yuri Gagarin, and less than a year after Alan Shepard blazed a suborbital trail for the U.S. This is the climax of 3 years of training. This is the moment when the eyes of the world turn to Cape Canaveral. The Russian orbits were in a thick fog of secrecy. The United States stands or falls in the white-hot glare of worldwide publicity. In the capsule atop the Atlas missile, the colonel will be strapped to a contoured couch. Once in flight, the Mercury will be tilted so that the astronaut will ride backwards. The seconds tick off as his rendezvous with space approaches. The hatch cover causes a slight delay when a defective bolt is discovered. Then, millions are moved to silent prayer. Everything is go. The takeoff of the Atlas, blasted aloft by 360,000 pounds of thrust, carries the Mercury gracefully skyward. The Friendship 7, climbing rapidly out of the Earth's atmosphere, exerts a pressure of 6 times the force of gravity on the astronaut. Loud and clear, he reports back to Mercury Control, reading off his instruments, commenting on his reactions, all as coolly and calmly as if he was commuting on the 827. Glenn is able to control the yaw and pitch of the vehicle himself. Now comes the moment when the Mercury is turned so that Glenn will be seated facing backwards. He checks with ground control.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous. Roger, turnaround has started. Capsule turning around, and I could see the booster during turnaround just a couple of 100 yards behind me. It was beautiful. Roger, 7. You have a go, at least 7 orbits. Roger, understand go for at least 7 orbits.
Actual pictures of Glenn in the capsule will give scientists the opportunity to study his reactions as he passes over the Canary Islands, Africa, the Indian Ocean, Australia, back across the Pacific and over the United States. He speeds at 17,500 miles an hour, reaching a high point of 160 miles and a low altitude of 99 miles. Each of the 3 orbits takes about 90 minutes. 3 times the colonel sees the sun rise within a period of 4 hours and 56 minutes. 3 times around the globe for a trip of 81,000 miles before he re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, a shield protecting the astronaut from the intense heat. The carrier Randolph is the command ship in the pickup area, but Glenn, instructed not to jettison his retrol rockets, lands short of the carrier. Ground instruments indicated his heat shield was loose, and he was instructed to hold onto his rocket bank to help hold the shield in place. Right at hand, however, is the destroyer Noah, and she speeds to the capsule to take the vehicle and pilot aboard. Despite a few shaky moments among ground control personnel, Glenn is down, hale and hearty. With support cables attached, a pincer-like crane will lift the Friendship 7 aboard.
Later this year, a more significant frontier will be crossed. Meanwhile, a newsreel reflects a nation's pride.
The end of a saga. The now famous Friendship 7 is safely lashed to the deck of the destroyer, and the crew prepares to help Glenn from the capsule. First, they attempt to help the colonel from his complex prison through the upper exit in the mouth. They encounter difficulties, and so it is decided to blow off the escape hatch cover. First glimpse of the conquering hero, Colonel John H. Glenn. He left his footprints among the stars. He has a grin as wide as the path he blazed.